Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Home Video Library. I'm your host Nathan P. Butler, author of A Saga on Home Video, the second edition of which can be found in a Kindle print replica version, paperback version, or deluxe hardback version over at Amazon.com right now. And what we're doing here is episode number 15 of the Q&A series. So I will be answering your questions that were posted underneath Q&A number 14. And then of course if you want questions answered in Q&A number 16, stick them in the comments here for number 15. Bear in mind, if you want me to actually answer in the comments, you'll need to tell me that, because otherwise I will hold them to the next one of these. I actually recorded this one before, but then things changed dramatically from the time that I recorded it to the time that I was going to get a chance to edit it, so I figured, you know what, better to re-record it so the information I give is accurate here. Before we dive into it too much, though, I do want to note a couple of things. As I'm recording this, it is the weekend of DragonCon 2023, so be safe to all my friends out there who are at DragonCon this year. It is basically right up the road in Atlanta, but I'm getting too old for that crap. And then on a more somber note here, I did want to express my condolences to the members of the 501st community and otherwise on the loss of Marcus Doring. I didn't know him well. I knew him somewhat, I think mainly from the podcasting days and whatnot, but we had been friends on Facebook as well, who passed away recently. The circumstances of which I will leave to those who are better suited to explain that. But my heart is with those who are in that family, and for those who are within that broader fandom community that surrounded him, because I always knew him to be kind of one of the good guys out there, so to speak, and it's a loss for the community for sure. Which made me think about something that I wanted to try to convey that maybe doesn't always come across in my older years, and I expressed some of my appreciation for this community back in the 10th anniversary of From the Star Wars Home Video Library video that I put up recently, which also has some stuff in it that is now out of date. But I expressed my appreciation for the community, and I've come to realize that in my mind, to some degree, when I say, "May the Force be with the home video viewers" at the end of an episode, it's become kind of the thing to say. It started as a tagline, but I feel like to some degree it is a tagline in the same vein of what I'm now seeing as I'm watching through the different campaigns of Critical Role, which is that Matt Mercer tends to always end those episodes with, "We love you very much, and is it Thursday yet?" which was the tagline, of course, because their episodes are Thursdays. But I feel like that when I say, "May the Force be with the home video viewers," I hope you take it in that same spirit. It is an appreciation for all of you out there in the community. It is a sense of fellowship with those out there in this same community, and hopefully we will continue to bolster each other as we go along, and is it time for a new release yet, perhaps? So just something I wanted to share. There's something that came to mind as I was sort of reflecting on the events surrounding the loss of Marcus and all. So, that all being said, let's dive into your questions from episode 14 of this Q&A series. And remember, I cannot see names. I can only see usernames the way that they are set up now, thanks to how YouTube lays that out. So the first question comes from @ChaseMC215, who asks, "Hey Nathan, quick question. Would Disney and Lucasfilm re-release the 1995 THX remastered versions of the original Star Wars Trilogy as a separate Blu-ray release for old school Star Wars fans and include the THX Genesis logo on it, if possible?" I think the answer to that is no. But the 50th anniversary of A New Hope may be our best chance of seeing something like that. But you're assuming they're going to be doing new physical releases that just don't reissue the same discs they've been reissuing recently, since 2020. And I don't necessarily see that happening. The whole idea being Lucas's definitive vision is theoretically what we see in 2019. Yes, I know he's gone from Lucasfilm, but he did have a hand, and one of the last things he did was that McClunky change, for instance, within A New Hope, because that whole process began under him as they were working towards 3D releases and the remastering to get ready for that and all that. So I feel like until or unless either there's a major anniversary where they're actually willing to go back to the early editions and release them, we won't see anything like that. Or until perhaps we have people who are at the head of Lucasfilm who have no personal loyalty to Lucas himself, having worked under him, because to him, his definitive vision was the later versions as they were iterated, not the original. I do feel as though maybe there's more of a likelihood of seeing the 1995 THX remastered version, which is actually the 1993 THX remastering for the definitive collection, Laserdiscs. That may be more likely to be something we would see than a true original version. because at least it has gone through the THX remastering to that extent, but I don't know. That is what we saw in 2006, which is a spliced opening of A New Hope on it, but I don't know that we should expect that at any point, let alone anytime soon. As for the THX logo, I don't follow that stuff. I have no idea which releases have which THX logos. I know there are people who are like way into that, but I'm not. I'm into minutia, as we saw with the coverage of like the Indonesian versus Malaysian VCDs and stuff recently. But when it comes to THX stuff, I'm very much out of the loop on that information. I would hope that whatever they release, though, would have classic, logos and stuff to go with it. But my guess would be it would just be the film in that format with any supplemental things like trailers and whatnot being more modern. So I doubt it. Then we have a question from Ivan the Hero, which is actually one of the questions that caused me to have to re-record this, who asks, with Bob Iger's recent return to Disney, do you think that increases the chance of Disney Plus shows finally receiving a physical release? If they want to keep those on their service, could they release older series like the Clone Wars micro-series or Holiday Special on Blu-ray? So I think it's unlikely that we will see a Clone Wars micro-series Blu-ray release or anything for the Holiday Special on physical media, because those are like back catalog stuff, and they seem to be really dwindling down on back catalog stuff. Though it'd be nice if, with Iger's return, that might prompt them to start doing more physical releases of back catalog stuff. And certainly, there now does exist an HD version of Clone Wars, and the Holiday Special has never seen physical release, but we have seen the cartoon now released on Disney Plus, and has sort of hidden bonus features in some of the more recent Blu-ray releases of The Empire Strikes Back. So maybe, but I would, maybe for the cartoon at least, but I would say that it's more likely to see the micro series than the Holiday Special, but even then, not very likely at all. But does it increase the chances of Disney Plus shows finally receiving physical release? We have our answer now, which is, again, why I'm re-recording this, because I answered before they had announced anything. So recently, we have seen the announcement that, at least so far, for Marvel, it is WandaVision Complete Series and Season 1 of Loki. And for Star Wars, it is Mandalorian Season 1 and Mandalorian Season 2. Those are all getting new physical media releases from Walt Disney Studios Home Entertainment in 2023. Now, as far as the Star Wars stuff, they're coming out in December. And it appears so far that there are effectively 3 different versions of each of the seasons of Mandalorian. So we have a 4K only release, it appears, in a steelbook, which is a wide release. All these are wide releases, not Best Buy exclusive. That's kind of a weird thing. In the American market, the only time we have ever seen steelbook releases for Star Wars that were not Best Buy exclusive was the 2015 steelbooks for the original trilogy and prequel trilogy as individual films. But in a steelbook release, you have the 4K discs for Mandalorian Season 1, wide release. Same thing for Season 2, wide release. Okay? Then also wide release, they said we're getting a Blu-ray set with just a regular O-ring type slipcover around it, but we've not seen that up for pre-order anywhere so far as of the time I'm recording this, on September 3rd of 2023. However, they did also announce a Blu-ray steelbook version, and just Blu-ray. So we now have the Blu-ray version out there as well for Season 1 and Season 2, also in steelbooks. We have also found that Disney Movie Club has their own exclusive version of both seasons. This is, as we've seen in some cases before, a Blu-ray/DVD steelbook. Not a Blu-ray steelbook, but Blu-ray and DVD steelbook for Season 1 and for Season 2. And if you order Season 1, it seems, for Disney Movie Club, you are going to get one of those little mini lithographs. It does not appear to have one for Season 2. So we'll be showing those on the show eventually, but just bear in mind there are at least 6 new Star Wars home video products coming in December. We have the 4K, Blu-ray, and Blu-ray/DVD versions of Mandalorian Seasons 1 and 2, the only ones that are exclusive being the Blu-ray/DVD versions from Disney Movie Club with their little mini lithograph. We've seen nothing so far as to anything exclusive from Best Buy, anything exclusive from Walmart or Target at all, or anything like a big lithograph set from Disney Store, the kind of stuff we would see when we see releases of the films. We've also seen nothing except for that original press release about regular non-steelbook versions of any of them. But yes, it appears to have definitely increased the likelihood because it is happening. Pre-orders are already up at this point, and in some cases, selling out depending on where you look. So that was a bit of a prescient question, but of course it was answered about 3 months ago. We got that question all the time, and now we actually have an answer that was more positive. It's nice to see that Walt Disney Studios Home Entertainment decided that they were going to celebrate the 10th anniversary of From the Star Wars Home Video Library by actually doing this. No, not really. It's nice to see that they wanted to contradict my comments in the 10th anniversary video about how we don't have them and hopefully it will come, but we might have to stick to, just collecting older stuff in that video. Maybe? No, probably not either. Just nice coincidental timing there. But suffice to say, I am glad to see it. I have my pre-orders in. I actually have pre-orders in for a little bit of redundancy with those, just in case certain steelbooks wind up getting dinged or anything. So let's see. Next up, we have James Lawner, who asks, if you could make a definitive collector's box set of Star Wars movies, what would you include and what kind of freebie items would you include in that set? So as far as the films themselves go, I would go with digital, 4K, and Blu-ray. Wouldn't really care about DVD, but I want to be able to play on more common players, even for those who don't have 4K players at this point, although that is becoming more of the norm. I would want it to be kind of like some of those releases for Blade Runner, where it's all the different possible cuts, right? So each film, every possible cut. And I want it to be all the films, all 11 of the live-action films. And I don't know that I would include Clone Wars. I think Clone Wars should get its own giant set of the entire series and include the film within that. As to what I would have for bonus features, all the previous bonus features, just dump them in as archival. I want 3 commentaries for each film. I want one to be the archival, kind of broken down stuff. I want the original commentaries back again if the films had those commentaries. I'd love to have a new commentary. Like maybe Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, who seem to be spearheading a lot of Star Wars these days, talking about the influences of those films, those specific films, on modern Star Wars television production or something like that. I think that'd be fun. And you know what? While you're at it, make those video commentaries. Not just commentaries that play along the bottom. Give us a little side screen of the person actually talking during the film with a separate little video track, kind of like they did with the Clone Wars film. Do something like that. Or do the little cutaway type things like they did on some of the Blu-rays like Watchmen from, I think, Warner Brothers back in the day. As to new bonus features, I'd love to see some new interviews and so forth, or maybe something that shows the evolution of all the different milestones of technology that were developed for the films for special effects. So I guess the ILM documentary fairly recently did a little bit of that on Disney+. As to physical bonus features, I figure some steelbooks are in order. Oh yes, I'm sorry. I also do want Blu-ray 3D discs of all of the films, just in case that wasn't obvious when I talked about Blu-ray. Blu-ray 3D, all of them. We know they exist for the prequels and haven't ever been released. They can make them because they were in the process of making them for the original trilogy, and of course they exist for all the newer films. Maybe a replica lightsaber or something, perhaps. Give us a box that, in and of itself, the box is presentation shelf-worthy, right? Something fancy and kind of cool, maybe a magnetic clasp kind of thing, like what we see with those one clicks out of China. Give us something fancy schmancy. And hey, while you're at it, if you can prove you've bought a shitload of our stuff before, we'll give you a deep discount on this order. I could just take a picture, right? Pretty much. But I'm not the one making those decisions. None of that seems like it'd be financially feasible in terms of production costs versus what they would have to charge at retail and how that would affect the demand for it based on the retail price. So, yeah, it's a dream. Then we have 2 questions here from Bucky749. The questions are, what do you think is the best classic Star Wars cartoon, droids or Ewoks? And what do you think is the best Star Wars live-action TV show? So I actually kind of already answered both of these. If you go back and look at the videos released in December of 2022, I have 2, actually there's 3 of them, we're just looking at 2 here, called Ranking the Star Wars Whatever. We have non-Lego animated series, and we have live action as 2 separate videos. So if you want to know about my thoughts on ranking Star Wars television series, then check out the live action TV series one. If you want to know about the animated stuff, check out the animated one. The short version of the answer is that definitely Droids was way better than Ewoks. It at least sometimes felt Star Wars-y. Ewoks almost never did, except for the one episode where they shoehorned in some ties to the Empire. Otherwise, Ewoks was a freaking mess, especially including the transition from Season 1 to Season 2, where characters disappeared, the animation style changes, the format changes, and you have certain characters whose personalities completely take a 180, and Wicket becomes even more insufferable than before. Droids at least experimented with Star Wars-based storytelling and gave us some arcs, which was not really a common thing in many animated series of the time. So Droids definitely wins that. As far as animated series, right now Andor takes the cake. It is a slow burn, but it's a great dramatic thriller, a deeper story, and some fantastic performances. Jury is still out on where Ahsoka will fall within my existing rankings, because Ahsoka has only aired, as of the time I'm recording this, 3 episodes. Then also from Bucky749 as a separate post, context. I once heard a theory that Battlestar Galactica was in the same universe as Star Wars. So my question, do you think these worlds are one, same, or not? No, I do not. It has some of the people who worked on A New Hope came over to work on Battlestar Galactica. It was that company trying to capitalize on the success of Star Wars to try to get their own space epic out there, just as some other companies were doing with their own space epics, but I have seen zero indication ever that there's supposed to be any connection between the two at all. So definitely not, I would say. Then questions here from Vintage VHS Treasures, who has 2 questions. Number 1, do you think we'll ever see an official release of the holiday special on physical media and or on digital? Why or why not? I think I've answered this quite a few times before. Short version is, no, I do not. Lucas believes it shouldn't exist at all anymore, about wanting to burn copies and so on. I think it is a shock that they have at least restored and brought back the animated feature from it, which we saw, of course, on Blu-ray releases starting in 2011 for The Empire Strikes Back and onward. And then, of course, we saw that get released on Disney+. But the whole holiday special, I don't see happening, at least not until at some point somebody who is in charge of that at Lucasfilm or has some sway at Lucasfilm basically is not someone who was personally loyal to Lucas at any given point, maybe even after Lucas has passed away. I simply do not see that happening. I see the demand still out there, but I don't see any desire on their part to actually do it. Then number 2, with it being almost 10 years, 3 months ago when he asked the question, since from the Star Wars Home Video Library started, did you ever think your collection would end up where it is now? Where I've addressed that in that 10th anniversary video, but again, short version is, not even close. I thought at the time I was getting into this that I had quite a few items. There were only a few left to collect for the United States, and we saw how well that went, eventually ballooning into 1 volume and then 3 volumes, and now, including foreign releases in some cases, heading towards 500 regular episodes and over 500, not counting just regular episodes, but also counting supplemental stuff and whatnot. So, yeah, never expected it to hit that point. Never expected I would be, again, looking for more room in my room to store stuff. But here we are, trying very hard not to have to get a storage space somewhere off-site to do it. I really don't want to do that for home video or for anything to make room for home video, but I guess we will see. Then a question from Chrono Keep, who I believe is Jonathan Conver. Were there ever releases of The Clone Wars that used the version on Cartoon Network, as in the version where the screen is cropped on the sides to fit widescreen TVs? I know it sounds odd since you could just zoom in on your TV whenever you wanted, but I've dealt with franchises where they only gave you a cropped version and not the original aspect ratio as intended, though in my case it's usually a 4:3 original show being zoomed in and released as 16:9, cutting off the top and bottom of the screen. And I actually answered this in the comments, and I answered looking at Clone Wars, not The Clone Wars, so my answer in the comments makes no sense. Yeah, I mean, we had different releases, like the early releases of Clone Wars stuff before the Season 1 set tended to be what we saw aired. So the regular aspect ratio that was aired on television was like 16:9 rather than being like the broader theatrical widescreen for those. And those are also the original aired versions overall, which means that they don't have any of the director's cut stuff you saw in the Season 1 set and onward. Digitally, you could get those through like iTunes because they were released the day after they hit television, so you could get the entire series in that sense, or at least the entire television aired series from Cartoon Network, seasons 1 through 5 that way. And then, interesting note with all that is that if you look at those American releases, Lair of Grievous is the only episode that actually doesn't have a regular non-edited, non-theatrical widescreen version available anywhere, because if you look at the stuff that was released with toys and those early releases before Season 1 got released as a whole, you do have all the other director's cut episodes from Season 1 actually presented in their sort of original aired formats. In other regions you see similar stuff, but it depends on whether we're talking about releases that came before the season set or after, because typically once the season set was released, there might still be individual releases of like a group of episodes at a time, but those would typically use the same masters as what we had from the season set. It's only in cases where the releases were from before the season set released, as my voice cracks there from gunk in my throat, that we typically would see the aired versions instead. So they are out there, just not many. But for the US, that's like a Galaxy Divided, Clone Commandos, stuff with the action figures like you're seeing behind me there, that sort of thing. And then finally, a question from The Black Stallion. Hi, Nathan. First off, I'd like to say that I've been a big fan of your YouTube channel for the past couple of years, and I have a first edition copy of a Saga on Home Video, which I have read over and over. So thank you for all the research and work you've done on the history of Star Wars Home Video. My question is, do you think the demand/interest for the original trilogy to get a home video release in a pre-special edition version has diminished over the years? I don't hear people complaining about the lack of a pre-special edition home video version of the trilogy as much now as I used to, like back when the trilogy was first released on DVD and then Blu-ray. I have to wonder if people nowadays are content to watch whatever version is most convenient and easily accessible, aka the version on Disney Plus or the latest home video release. And if parents are introducing their kids to Star Wars using these versions, then the kids won't have the interest to see the movies in a pre-special edition version, and interest in seeing the films in their pre-1997 versions will become more of a niche thing. What do you think? Thank you. So I think you're onto something there in terms of generational stuff. I think that those who care the most about the original versions being released are those that grew up with them, right? Those for whom Star Wars was whatever we saw prior to 1997. Whereas, as time goes on, you have people whose introduction to Star Wars and whose version they saw the most, that sort of was ingrained as their Star Wars, was the 97 versions, or was the 2004 or 2011 or even now 2019 versions of those films, so they won't care as much about the original versions being released unless they have such a love for the source material that they want to see the originals preserved in some form. And yes, that was something dinging, and my phone is on silent, so I have no idea where that ding came from, and I'm not going to try to re-say that because I was talking too freaking fast. I would say, though, that convenience does play somewhat of a role. If someone wants to watch the films now, typically I think most people would turn to whatever is convenient now on a modern player or something that's convenient as streaming, as opposed to getting out an older media copy. Though I think that would more drive people who want the original versions to want them more, because over time, as media formats change, there's less and less options to actually watch those original versions outside of like fan restorations and so on. So I don't know how that's going to necessarily play into it. But I think to some degree, what we're seeing right now with less of a clamor for it is like an exhaustion and a sense of defeat more than anything else. We've been asking for the original versions to be released on DVD since prior to 2004, when it turned out we got another iteration of the special editions, and then asking for it on Blu-ray, and then asking for it on 4K or streaming and so on. And it's always sort of fallen on deaf ears. Even when we did get these sort of original versions in 2006 and 2008, which were basically just the Laserdisc versions from '93 from the definitive collection, the THX remastered version with a swapped out opening of A New Hope, it wasn't a great copy of it that we got. It was letterboxed and so on. So I feel as though it's not like the knowledge isn't there that people are clamoring for this. And that those who care about like the preservation of cinema would care about this. But I think part of it really is there's only so much you can just scream into the hurricane until finally you say, I give up. I give up. I give up. Nothing I'm saying is penetrating. It's all lost in the noise. They simply don't care. Or they simply don't want to do it. Or they care, but it's not the right time. Whatever it might be. So I feel as though it's less a generational thing. Unfortunately, it's kind of the pessimist side of me, I guess. But I think it's less of a generational thing and more of an exhaustion. More of a we asked, and it just hasn't been happening. Plus also you had the shift, right? Where the clamor slowly shifted from being original trilogy, give us the original versions, to give us anything from Disney Plus for God's sake on physical media. Which now they've basically answered. Do I think there's an opportunity for an unaltered version of the original trilogy films to be released in the future, digitally or on physical media? Maybe. If they care about anniversaries again, we are coming up on the 50th anniversary of A New Hope in 2027. But I gotta say, they haven't really cared about anniversaries much with previous releases, so I don't know why they would care that much about this one. So yeah, here's hoping we'll see something like that, but I'm not necessarily going to hold my breath that we are going to see anything of the kind. But I definitely feel as though, yes, the clamor for the originals has faded, but unfortunately I think it's just the exhaustion and the fact that it's been falling on deaf ears, and people are just tired, rather than it having anything to do with the generational stuff. Although the generational stuff is probably an underlying thing that, especially over time, will become more prominent than what I'm talking about, for sure. And that is all the questions we have for this one. So if you have any questions for the next one, remember to put them into the comments for this one, and we will use them for number 17. Thank you all for asking your questions here. I really appreciate it. And is it Thursday? No, wait. Oh, no. With that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching. And may the Force be with the home video viewers. Taken hopefully in the way I mentioned before. You in this community are appreciated.